Hello, everyone, and welcome to UGA Sports Rumors versus Facts. I am Blaine Gilmer here with Trent Smallwood and Jed May, and we are here once again talking UGA football recruiting. The 2023 signing period, the early signing period, has kind of come and gone, and now we're going to analyze kind of what Georgia got in that class, that early signing class. Some of them already practicing in bowl preparation, but guys, as we're coming literally off of Christmas Day. Did you guys have a Merry Christmas? How's everything going over there in the Smallwood and May households?
Yeah, good Christmas. I got a little cold or something for Christmas. So that's always fun, but yeah, it's good. We got the added gift of having some football on yesterday, so good weekend. Just all weekend was a good weekend.
Trent,
Yeah,
how'd the kiddos enjoy it?
they enjoyed it. It was, you spend two. Well, I don't, but the wife spends 2 months, a month and a half gearing up, buying gifts, and it's just over in like 32 seconds. So
Yeah,
it was good.
it was quick for sure. Absolutely. That it's kind of like a football game, right? Especially not much different than what the college football playoff teams are about to do. A lot of game planning, a lot of prepping, and then in a matter of what seems minutes when it goes through, it's done with. So speaking of that, the teams arriving in Atlanta today for the Peach Bowl, the college football playoff semifinal between Georgia and Ohio State. We've got all the coverage over there, so make sure you're a member of UGA Sports to catch all of that. And then, of course, our recruiting coverage that we have here, our show each and every Monday night that we have for you that's available on podcast the next day. And then, of course, all the news, the information, the scoop that comes with the vault, and got another signing period that's going to be coming up in February. Still a couple of targets out there that Georgia's going to probably go after here in that class. But guys, this is the first time that we've really had a chance to all get together and talk since the signing period has been completed, and since Georgia kind of went crazy in the transfer market. After not taking any last year, they get two splash hits over there with Ra Thomas and Dominic Lovett, two of the more, I guess, well-known targets out there, and two really good SEC caliber receivers. What are your guys' thoughts on what Georgia has done so far in the transfer portal and what they're getting? Trent, we'll start with you and then go to Jed.
Yeah, and I think with Darnell Washington leaving this offense, you're going to see more of a different offense next year, and not necessarily centered around 12 personnel, 13 personnel, or it'll be more 11 personnel with Brock. And then I'm not saying Georgia's going to completely go away from that, but I would say the majority there's going to be more wide receivers on the field, and Georgia didn't have the wide receivers necessarily this year, well, and they were lucky enough to have two of the best tight ends in the country to offset that. But next year you'll have Brock, and then you'll have some youth at tight end. And I expect Georgia to go to more of a wide receiver, and you bringing in one of the best slot receivers that Georgia's played in Dominic Levitt, and letting him come in and fill Kyrus Jackson's shoes with him leaving, and Dominic Blaylock also could be leaving as he walked on senior day. And then Ra Thomas, a true outside target that can go up win one-on-one battles. And you still have AD Mitchell coming off injury. So I think Georgia has not only they've added some veteran leadership to that group and some proven skill at that group to kind of help these younger guys, because I think the guys they brought in are elite as well.
Jed, what do you think, man?
I mean, it's like Kirby Smart always says, you cater your. I mean, I guess specifically on offense, your play calling, your scheme stuff to the players you got. This year, like you said, Trent, they've gone with 12 personnel a lot because that's the strength of the team is you've got the best tight end room in the country. Now, next year, knowing that you're going to be using more receivers, they attack that position really hard in the portal, and you look forward. There's the smoke, no pun intended, around Smoke Booby is another guy that could be coming in, and getting those guys on campus, or I don't know if they're on campus right now, but they'll be here in the spring and building those relationships with whoever's going to end up being the starting quarterback next year. So it's huge. I mean, it's Kirby Smart has said, because he's been asked in the lead up to these bowl games, why did you not go to the portal last year? He's like, we went to the portal. He said, like, we just struck out. So this year they didn't strike out.
Kirby's terms right there, saying
landing two of their top guys, and more to come, maybe.
Yeah, here's the thing that I was talking to my good friend Tavares King and O'Shawn Marino. We do a show each week, and we were talking, and Tavares and I are kind of on the thoughts of, okay, when you look at Georgia wide receivers, Dominic Lovett may be the most dynamic Georgia wide receiver in terms of a slot guy, not excluding George Pickens on the outside, since McCole Hardman and Isaiah McKenzie. Like, there's not really been another guy since then. He fits that mold, Trent, and he can take the top off, and also he can really work people underneath. I think that's something that Georgia hasn't had, like I said, since Hardman or since Isaiah McKenzie.
Yeah, definitely. And then the way Monken likes to get his playmakers out in space, and bringing him in, and bringing Rara Thomas in, who's a proven guy, even a proven blocker out wide in the SEC. Just bringing those guys in. But yeah, definitely, I think Dominic Lovett could make a huge impact. Will he have 800,000 yards? I don't know, but he came here for a reason, and he came here because he felt like he could be developed to go make that next move to the NFL. And I think Georgia, having him along with the guys that they have on campus, they could really be that dynamic in the passing game next year.
Now, you talked about we talked about Lovett right there, but Ra himself, I mean, you mentioned it, the physicality. He's the guy, I believe, listed at 6'2". He just seems like he's got a bigger frame, and also he was repeatedly, it seemed like, at his time at Mississippi State, hitting the home run ball. So getting that getting that yards after catch, the average yards per catch up there, something that Georgia at times has struggled with, especially when A.D. Mitchell has been out at the wide receiver position. So I think it's not just one guy and then another guy that's kind of afterthought. I think it's two huge pickups for Georgia in terms of receiver.
Yeah, and they play two different – I mean, the way Georgia uses, they use guys all over the field, but they're two different guys. Like you said, Dominic Lovett, I mean, when you think of Kearis Jackson, who has filled that kind of role, you don't necessarily think dynamic, explosive athlete. Kearis Jackson's a very good football player, but he's more of like a technician, like he's a solid guy, but not necessarily a
term grit. The term grit comes to mind.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. He's a different kind of good football player. Dominic Lovett brings just another level of athleticism to that spot. And then with Ra Thomas, you think of what Marcus Rosemy-Jack Saint's been able to do this year. Another big-bodied guy, lines up on the outside most of the time. And you know, with AD Mitchell and Marcus Rosemy-Jack Saint and those guys, potentially complementing that room next year as well. It's just another big body. So definitely two different guys, but two guys that are really going to help this offense next year.
Yeah, looking at Lovett's highlights, just watching the slot fades and just watching him win one-on-one battles against the nickel cornerback or safety. I mean, that's just something that Georgia's been missing, and in the offense, somebody that can really just you can go out there and count on taking the top off. You kind of look at Arian Smith as that guy, but he has less than 10 total receptions in his career. So they've really missed that big play guy, and I think Lovett can definitely be that.
Yeah, so two big pickups there. Now let's turn our attention to the actual signing class. Georgia brings in a couple 5 stars right off the bat that we have to look at here on the edge on defense. Two, much like we said with Ra Thomas and Dominic Lovett at receiver, Samuel Mpemba and Damon Wilson are two different type guys, but I don't think, Jed, that there could have been a better performance for Chidera Uzodiribe than in his first class, getting those two. And, oh, by the way, another top 100, actually top 50 player in Gabe Harris that's going to be added into that mix as well. Uzodiribe probably earned himself a little raise at the end of the year when things Kirby's going through the Excel spreadsheet there.
Well, the crazy thing about it is when you look at the 5 stars in Damon Wilson and Sam Mpemba, not only are those two top 20 guys or whatever they're rated now, those are guys that Georgia wasn't even really like leading for when Uzodiribe got the job. We knew about Gabe Harris. Georgia was really in on him with Dan Lanning in town, but I mean, Uzodiribe just gets here and both of the recruitments of both of those guys just takes off. We all remember Damon Wilson, that first official visit weekend in June. There was that huge. I'm getting echoed. My point is so good. They brought in all those, Caleb Downs, Justice Haynes. They're like, oh, who's this other guy that's here? It was Damon Wilson in town for a multi-day unofficial, and Samuel Mpemba as well was in Athens about every weekend this fall, it seemed like. So it's an amazing job. Two different guys, different skill sets. I think you've got a better chance of seeing Damon Wilson on the field next year just because of how raw Samuel Mpemba is at that position. But they've both just got super, super high ceilings at that outside linebacker edge spot.
Trent, I think when it comes to, like Jed pointed out, different guys, you've got guys who are, I was talking to Trent and now he's gone. So we'll just go us two for a minute. Here's what I think. Oh, he's back with us. Let's go with Trent. Sorry for the technical difficulties. All right, Trent. So as Jed was saying right there, two different skill sets when it comes down to Mpemba and Wilson, more of that edge rusher, that true guy that's going to get after the quarterback. Not saying that Mpemba can't, but Wilson is more of that guy. But it's also important to have that guy who is going to set the edge and be able to make sure, okay, you're not going to run wide zone over here. You're not gonna sneak out the back on a counter or on a zone play, because we're gonna have it shut down and we're gonna be gap control with a big body. I mean, and Mpemba's 6'5", 254. That's huge for the way Georgia plays defense.
Yeah, and I think we always talk about we think Damon Wilson's more ready to play day one, which I do think from a pass rushing standpoint that he is better, because I think Mpemba's a little raw. But having Mpemba and Gabe Harris, I think those can be two base guys that can play on early downs, because they can win battles and stop the run and do things like that. And I think Wilson can be that come in on the pass rushing specialist and make a name for himself year one.
Absolutely. Now we talked about wide receiver earlier in this class, and by the way, before I move on, we don't want to rush over Gabe Harris. Gabe Harris is a guy who went down to IMG, and we were getting reports when he got down to IMG that, man, this kid's, kicking a lot of people's tails down here at IMG, and that's supposed to be the cream of the crop. So Gabe Harris definitely, just because he doesn't have that fifth star beside his name doesn't mean he couldn't have potentially as big of an impact as the other two. Very, very athletic, very big, ideal size. So like we said, the edge, the outside linebacker group really got taken care of. Then I said we talked about wide receiver in the transfer portals. Guys, I think maybe the second most impressive haul right there with inside linebacker, but we'll talk about receiver first, is the wide receiver position. What Georgia went out and did in this early signing period, the speed, the amount of speed that Georgia brought in, and in some size with Tyler Williams. But Jed, we're talking about like guys that are known as the quote unquote track guys. But man, they do more than that. They're solid route runners with really good hands as well. So Brian McClendon doing his thing in this class.
Yeah, you've got, 2 4-3 40-yard dash guys in Yazeed Haynes and Anthony Evans. And both of those guys, by the way, were flips. Yazeed Haynes from Penn State and Anthony Evans from Oklahoma. So that's another, feather in the cap to work extra hard to get those guys pried away from their old schools. And then Tyler Williams, he's got the size. He's in the 4.4s or low 4.5s, I think, playing, and he's like, he gets forgotten about as the slow guy. Like it's amazing the athleticism that Brian McClendon's brought in. There's Raymond Cottrell, who is committed, not signed yet, as another, kind of like we were talking about Ra Thomas, a big framed kind of guy on the outside. So it's crazy because we've all heard and read on the vault, the Georgia can't recruit receivers. Good receivers don't want to come to Georgia and all this kind of stuff. The receivers Georgia brought in this year are pretty dang good. When you look at it as a whole, a collective group of guys, it's one of the more impressive groups in the country.
Trent, what do you think?
Yeah, I think looking back and they've been recruiting the speed for a couple of years, but they haven't been recruiting speed as I guess from a true football standpoint, as an overall receiver, I think Anthony Evans is a not only a speedster or a track guy, but he is just a true, polished receiver, and a good route runner. He's got the ability to make people miss in open space, and I think that's one thing Arian Smith lacks. And I saw that in the LSU game when they threw him a swing pass out, and he's got the overall speed. He just don't have that ability to, make people miss. And Anthony Evans has that. Yazeed Haynes has that. I think that's two receivers that, even though we're talking about the 4.3 speed, they have the ability after the catch to make people miss. They have the ability, the route running ability. So they're more polished receivers and not just overall speedsters coming in.
Yeah, those are the two groups that if I was going to give a grade, like we said, outside linebacker, edge defender first, and then wide receiver, those are the two that would get the straight up A grade, probably A+ for outside linebacker, in my opinion, what Georgia brought in this class. And then in that A- level, I would probably drop in there to and remember, when you're the number 2 team in the class, I mean, you're going to have really high grades here. I would probably drop in inside linebacker and tight end in that group, because my goodness, Glenn Schumann and Todd Hartley, it's just like they say every year, they're like, oh yeah, watch this, because they're just going to go get a guy that they want and bring him in. That tight end group, so talented in Pierce, Sperlin, and Lawson Lucky. Pierce coming back off of injury, but 6'6", 240 pounds. I know Darnell is like, 6'8", 280, but the way that Pierce moves with the size that he has, Jed, I think he's a little bit different than Georgia's had with any of these tight ends so far.
Yeah, I'll be honest. When I read, like you said, 6'7", 240 on the signee release or whatever Georgia put, I was shocked. I was like, am I reading the wrong? Am I reading the wrong guy? I could not believe he had. I mean, the height, I kind of got, because it's been a while since I've seen him in person, and the weight, just because we talked about him before as this guy he's more of just a big receiver, and he's gonna have to come in and learn to block and all this kind of stuff, and he's still gonna have to learn those things. But 240 is a lot more in line with what Georgia wants their tight ends to be at than the 220 range. So that's just, and then you've already got Lawson Lucky, who's Trent, you were talking about playing less 12 personnel next year. Lawson Lucky's that guy who's like that traditional John Fitzpatrick, Darnell Washington, just road grader as a blocker type. So with those two guys, again, kind of like we were talking about with the outside linebackers and transfer receivers, different guys, different skill sets, but guys that fit what Georgia wants to do really well.
Trent, he just talked about 12 personnel and Lawson Lucky. I think people just don't realize until you go watch Lawson play in person. I mean, he's a mauler when you're talking about blocking. He it's rare to get high school tight ends that enjoy the blocking aspect of the game as much, if not more so, than catching the football. He's plenty talented catching the football, running routes, but I was so impressed with his blocking when I went and watched him in person this year, and I think he's potentially somebody that can make an impact next year if he fits into that certain role. Georgia does want to go 12 personnel, like Jed said.
Yeah, and the way the tight end has changed with the spread offenses, they're more like a fourth wide receiver coming out of high schools, and the way he takes pride in the blocking, is definitely something that where he could play right away, because Georgia's definitely gonna miss Darnell. And there's definitely gonna be situations where they have that second or third and 1, and they're trying to punch one, and you need those guys. You need to get in the 12 personnel or even 13 personnel, and having a guy like Lawson who is coming in, and he's a willing and very good blocker, will definitely get him on the field sooner than later.
Absolutely. So, like I said, I'd probably give them that tight end position, and maybe in the A- group, and right there in that same group, I'd probably give inside linebackers, like I said, because Glenn Schumann just goes out, and the only reason is because I think there's some questions at times with some of the foot speed maybe of a CJ Allen. Is he really that fast, or is it the double A competition he's facing over there at Lamar County, he just runs past all those guys at running back and on the field. So there's always those questions when you're making that jump from low high school ball, a low classification up to college, but 6'1", 220. CJ Allen all over the field. Of course, Raylan Wilson may be the best overall athlete in the class, just naturally gifted how he can run and the freakish things he can do. And then Troy Bowles, he's a guy who he's been around football, knows football his entire life. But the only thing that gives me a question there, Trent, is watching a lot of the film down there at Jesuit. Troy Bowles was used a lot at safety this year. They dropped him back and played safety. So if he's playing safety a lot of times, does he have to relearn some of that inside linebacker stuff? What's your thoughts on that? But in terms of athletically, I think it's A-. I mean, bring in another talented trio of inside linebackers, and Georgia continues to rebuild.
Yeah, I just feel like from a football knowledge, and having a dad as a head coach in the NFL and then going to Kirby, I don't think the learning process, whether or not I did see him play a lot of safety in high school, but I think the learning curve there will be much less for him than other players, given the knowledge he probably has of the game of football. I kind of look at him as somebody who's probably the captain of the defense here in a couple of years, just from a simple knowledge standpoint and how to line people up and stuff like that. But yeah, and CJ Allen, I think just watching the tape, he has his tape's just so impressive. I mean, whether it's running back or linebacker, speed wise. It might take some time to get up to speed wise from the move from AA to the SEC, but I look at him as a guy who could special teams player early, and then in a couple of years move his way up, and then Raylan Wilson, he's just a guy that kind of like Jelon Walker, who can put on the field in third down situations and put him out there and make plays. So that trio. It'll kind of get overshadowed with what Georgia has coming back next year, and you might not see them on the field as much as some of these other signees, but it is a talented trio for sure.
Well, you know who that sounds a lot like, Jed? That sounds a lot like the trio of Jamon Dumas-Johnson, Smile Munden, and Xavier Sorry that came in two recruiting classes ago, got to sit back and learn behind Quay Walker, Shannon Tyndall, and Nakobe Dean, and now this year at least two of those three are playing major roles in this Georgia defense in the 2022 season.
Yeah, and it's remarkable the lineage or whatever at that position, because you went from Roquan Smith to Tay Crowder, which, by the way, if you're Glenn Schumann and you're going into CJ Allen's living room and you're trying to sell development, look at Tay Crowder, who was a freaking running back for 2 years when he got to Georgia and is now. He just got waived by the Giants, but he went from Mr. Irrelevant to starting for the Giants. I mean, that speaks for itself. But from him to Monty Rice to Nakobe Dean to Jamon Dumas-Johnson, it's amazing. Like you guys said, they always reload. They always had that guy in the middle of the defense that's really, really good. And you look at all these guys; they're modern inside linebackers. They can go sideline to sideline. They've all got great speed. So yeah, I mean, it's like you said, Blaine. It's a really, really impressive group, one of the best on the team in this class.
Yeah, and then I think that defensive tackle you could put right there with it in terms of how well they did, but the true defensive linemen in this class, there's only two of them. They wanted to add, I think, another one with a guy like, whether it would have been a David Hobbs, who was more of a tweener type guy, but ends up going to Tennessee. There was a couple other guys that they had their eyes on, but they end up getting Jamal Jarrett and Jordan Hall. And Trent, there's already been all these comparisons out there, and naturally so, because of the size of the two and the athleticism of the two, to Jordan Davis and Devontae Wyatt. If Jamal Jarrett and Jordan Hall get even close to that, I think Kirby Smart and Trey Scott would have to be ecstatic about the haul that they brought in on the interior defensive line in the class of 2023.
Yeah, I look at Jamal Jarrett as that big run stuffer. Probably I think they reported at 370.
378.
378. So he'll have to get his body into shape and stuff like that. I know Jordan Davis was very similar when he came in. But for Hall, I mean, I think Hall could be very special. He's athletic. He comes in like a guy like Devontae Wyatt, or even a guy like Jalen Carter out of Florida. Just athletic. Probably play a lot of at the 3, or could even slide him out and play at the 5, similar to what Jalen Carter does. And I think that kid could be very special. I just look at that line at the Georgia has, and having Jalen Hall and Barry Alexander on the same, at defense tackle on the same line. That could be scary for Georgia's defense line in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and Jed mentioned the word lineage a while ago, whether it's defensive tackle or inside linebacker. Georgia's got a great, kind of history there. Well, another company, an entity that has a great history would be Turner Wood & Smith. You need to make sure you check out Turner Wood & Smith Insurance, sponsor of UGA Sports, Rumors versus Facts. Auto Owners Insurance is in cooperation with them. Life, home, car, business. They'll take care of your policies. Turner Wood & Smith takes care of your customer service. Make sure to get you all set up. And the reason I say they have a great lineage and heritage over there, because they've both been around for over 100 years. They'll treat you right. Make sure to check out Turner Wood & Smith Insurance in cooperation with Auto Owners. All right, so we've talked a lot about the class of 2023. Offensive line is that is one that I wouldn't give an A quite yet. Now, honestly, there's parts of it that I would. Bo Hughley, I think, has a chance to develop into. I don't think he's a finished product by any means, but I think he has a chance to really develop into something special because of that, frame. I mean, he's 6'7", close to 300 pounds. He can move. You see what he does on the basketball court. He's athletic. And then, of course, Monroe Freeling, the same kind of mold. He's gotten his way up to 300 pounds. He's between, 6'7", 6'8" in there. But some pieces I think that have to come in and kind of will be developing over the next couple of years. Kelton Smith, Joshua Miller, who they flipped from Penn State, and then a guy that they got committed late from Brunswick, another big frame guy, Jamal Merriweather, has not signed yet. Will probably sign in February. Jed, your assessment of this offensive line haul for Georgia?
Yeah, and I think it's a little bit like the class they signed last year, because you look at those guys. Jacob Hood, we're like, okay, he's a really big frame guy on the outside. Needs a ton to develop. Ernest Green was kind of the bell cow of the class, and he's been out for a lot of this year with the back injury. But I think you look at what they brought in at tackle, specifically with Merriweather, Freeling, and Hughley. All those guys kind of project on the outside. They're big, long, rangy, athletic guys, like a little different prototype than some alignment you've seen at Georgia before. And that's just what Stacey Searles has targeted this cycle. That those are the guys he's looking for. And they've all got really good potential. I think they're all going to need to do some developing this spring. For you look at a guy like Monroe Freeling, this spring is going to be critical for him to see if he can maybe work his way to being a possible reserve piece this fall, because the depth chart, especially depending on how things shake out, could be a little iffy. So those guys all need time to develop, like any lineman that comes in, but they've all got really high ceilings for sure.
Brett Womack's calling his shot, saying that Freeland's going to be an all SEC tackle. So mark it down now. We can mark it 28-47 on Rumors versus Facts, December 26th. Brett Womack says all SEC tackle. So we've talked a lot about the class here so far, Trent, and then what you can't forget about is Georgia brings in one running back in Roderick Robinson, who we've talked about kind of ad nauseum here, how big he is, how versatile he is, even for his size. And Georgia, who knows how they may address. They may stay pat. They stand pat. They may end up going and addressing the second, maybe running back slot there between now and spring ball, whether that's transfer portal or whether that's another back in this class. But Del McGee, Kirby Smart, Todd Monken all had to really like this kid from San Diego, California, to spend the time and resources to go out there and recruit him and make him a part of this class.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people look at Georgia's running back class and feel like Dell struck out in this class, and I don't feel like he did because he went out and got Roderick Robinson, who is he might be a little bit lower ranked than Justice, but I think he's an elite back in this class. He has the size, he has the ability to catch the ball in the backfield. He has everything Georgia wants in this offense. So, uh, I think they're going to wait and see on a second back. I think you could see four backs return for Georgia. You could see Kenny McIntosh as the only guy that leads the program, and if that's the case, and Georgia have a better understanding of that here in a couple weeks, and they can go to the portal or add another back in this class if need be, but. If they do return four, I expect Georgia to stay pat with just Roderick.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be if everything stays status quo, goes as we expect it to. Looks like from everything we've heard that I believe that Kendall Milton would be returning next year. That would be my gut feeling. And so you'd have him and Dejan Edwards and, of course, Branson Robinson, Andrew Paul returning from injury, and then Roger Robinson there. So 5 really talented running backs and just kind of the number that Georgia likes to have stocked up there. So that would be the case there. And then the other side of the ball, we would have to go to DB. Again, it's kind of almost like offensive line for me. Some really, really high caliber targets, and then some other guys I think that are going to have to get in there and adjust to SEC ball. How Georgia does things in their system. Heck, Kyron Jones is going to have to really learn defensive back a good bit. He played mostly running back in high school, was committed as a running back at NC State. So, but guys, what's your assessment of the defensive back class before we start going to questions and looking ahead to 2024? What did you think about Georgia's defensive back haul this time around?
I mean, I think you look at what they brought in at corner last year, and that cupboard is fairly well stocked. They needed a safety, like they needed that pure safety, like a Malachi Starks from last year. Obviously, they really went after Caleb Downs, who ended up signing with Alabama. Jonell Aguero was really good as well. He kind of gets overshadowed because there's so much angst over missing on downs, but Jonell Aguero is a really good player, a guy who could. I mean, he probably won't start day one like Malachi Starks, but he's a guy who could cross train multiple positions, could be a piece used at star, at safety. Could even play on the outside maybe. I mean, he's a really good versatile guy. So I think they got that need. Then you look at some of these other guys. AJ Harris is a very well refined guy already. But like you said, some of these guys, Kyron Jones will need to develop. Justin Rhett's the guy who probably will need to develop. Daniel Harris is a long rangy guy who's going to need to kind of.
Daniel Harris just needs to eat.
Yeah. Daniel Harris needs to hit McDonald's about 4 or 5 times a week, and he'll be right in business. So
he needs to get on that Chad Ochocinco diet when he was playing over there.
But with those guys, I mean, the thing about all these guys that have been brought in is that none of them are going to be brought in and say, okay, like we're going to have to throw you out there day one, no matter what. They're all probably going to have time to develop. And if they prove to be the best guy for job X, whatever, then great. But none of them are going to really be thrown into the fire probably from day one. So they'll have that time to learn. Several of those guys are already on campus. Like I know AJ Harris is, and Jonell Aguero is rolling early as well. So, but yeah, a lot of good potential in that defensive backfield, which you expect from a Kirby Smart and Will Muschamp team.
Trent, I know that the main thing you wanted to talk about before we got on here was the place kicker, Peyton Woodring, and that's the last one we haven't talked about in this class. Big leg coming from Cajun country down there. Jed and I were talking last episode how he hit one from 60. It looked like it'd been good from 65 to 67 yards. I mean, he drilled it over there. And, Pod Lesney probably gone after this year. So, I don't know listen, it's hard to keep up with eligibility now with COVID year and all that kind of stuff, but I think he'll be moving on and Georgia will be looking for another place kicker. Peyton Woodring is a guy who we know he has a big enough leg. Now there's a lot more things that go into it, but man, Georgia and a 3-star kicker, that's not something to scoff at. Usually kickers don't even get stars.
Yeah, I think he's got big shoes to fill coming after Hot Rod and then Podlesny, the way they kick for Georgia. And Georgia has a high standard for kickers, and it's him coming in with a big leg, probably compete with Zirkle, and see who wins that job. But he'll have every chance to win that job as a freshman. Coming from the boot having the boot, and he definitely has the leg. Like you said, a lot more goes into kicking than just being able to kick the ball 60 yards. A lot of mental and stuff like that, but I think he's a special kicker that can compete for the job day one.
So that is your class of 2023 analysis so far, the early signing period. Let's go ahead and get to some questions, because we had some questions that pertain to what could be of the rest of it here. And the first one, Jed, comes from Darth Janus again.
Yeah, it says, how do you expect the rest of this class to fill out? What are some positions and names we could look at in terms of the portal? And thanks, guys, and happy holidays from Dallas. So happy holidays to you as well, Mr. Darth.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Happy holidays to our Star Wars friend over there. Trent, really, you kind of brought it to our attention, maybe, I don't know, 6 weeks out from the early sign period, be like, listen, I think Georgia's got a little bit more of a shot than people are talking about with this Deuce Robinson character. And big tight end, plays like a receiver, of course, from out west. And it really, people thought it was a USC Texas battle for a while. Now Georgia's squarely in this one. That's probably the biggest name that you're looking at in terms of the remainder of the high school class here. And I'm sure there'll be some unknowns pop up, but what's your assessment as we kind of are making the turn here and heading into the next year and into that February signing period?
Yeah, I think all the focus on Deuce, and then signing Merriweather and Cottrell still unsigned. But I think Deuce is the main target. I think you'll probably see his name pop up about 742 times on the vault over the next month, because that is the guy that all the focus is around. Kirby saved his in home, so he'll probably take that in home late January. You got to like where Georgia stands. Todd Hartley has been able to close on tight ends. The way Georgia uses that position, and there's also the baseball aspect. But I like where Georgia stands as of today. I think Georgia has a really good chance to add him as a third tight end, and we've been hinting that Georgia could lose as many as 4 tight ends off this year's roster. And with Gilbert hitting the portal, and Darnell Washington headed off to NFL more than likely, and then Rowland and Brett Sather, don't know what their future holds, but they both did walk on senior day. So you could be looking at 4 departing tight ends, and Georgia could pull in that third one, and all eyes and focus are on Deuce right now.
Yeah, and the second part of that question, it says, what are some positions and names that we could look at in terms of the portal? I think the only name that is really out there that you could go and tag and saying, Smoke Bowie is probably a guy who you're looking to be a part of the Georgia team after everything gets settled down here, CFP, all that kind of stuff may even be afterwards of that. But I would expect him to end up being a part of this portal class. I guess Bainbridge guy, everybody who was committed to Georgia at one point. But the positions, Trent and Jed, I'll go to you. The positions, I think, Trent just mentioned tight end. There's going to be some guys leaving there. I think they're the other positions, they're just kind of under. They don't have the numbers that they would necessarily like at wide receiver, at DB, and they addressed wide receiver, DB being the other one. Probably another guy on the edge, maybe an experienced guy on the edge. And I could even see a defensive tackle maybe in there. So I think those are the positions I'm kind of trending toward right now. I don't think all those names are even in the portal yet that they would go after.
Yeah, I think those are the main positions. I mean, they could maybe take a portal running back. I mean, you can't rule that out, but like the main guy was kind of Marshawn Lloyd when he entered the portal, then there hadn't really been a whole lot of traction there. So But yeah, I mean, just bringing in experience. Those are positions. When you mentioned defensive tackle and edge, those are positions that not even necessarily short on talent. Just there's not won't be a real veteran guy that's been through. I mean, who's the most experienced edge that'll be back next year as of now? Like Chaz Chambliss, who's been a reserve most of his Georgia career until the last 4 or 5 games with Nolan Smith out. So just bringing in a veteran guy, not even necessarily a game record type. I mean, like you said, Blaine, Kirby Smart's going to bring in guys who are going to play from day one, but a veteran presence even to add to those rooms could be something they look at. And don't forget, there could be a lot of guys. I mean, the next portal window opens in
There's
April.
one for like 15. Well, there's one for like 15 days, I think, in January, and then after that, the next one opens up. That second one will be after spring ball. That second wave when guys get disgruntled because they didn't win the job, Trent, and they decide to go hit the portal. But I think that's kind of. Would you agree those positions, Trent, that we're kind of looking at, other than how Georgia's already addressed wide receiver, probably another a DB or two with Smoke, and then. Whether it's an experienced edge guy or an experienced defensive lineman to kind of shore up the front of that defense.
Yeah, I think it'll be an assessment after Georgia plays in this playoff and get the playoffs over, see who's exactly leaving the program. You'll have a better understanding of what, depth-wise needs you need. The one area I look at is maybe the 5 tech on defensive lineman. You had Michael Williams forced into action, and it's been very good, playing a lot of snaps. They probably need some depth at that position. Like you said, DB. I think the one position that they wanted to address quickly was wide receiver, and they did so. And everything else, I think it's a wait and see. See who leaves and goes to the portal at DB. See who maybe defensive line. See who goes to the portal. They've kind of addressed inside linebacker and what they have coming back with the starters they have coming back next year. I don't think that'll be a need. And they don't really. They haven't taken an offensive lineman, but I don't think there'll be much need there. So I think running back and defensive lineman would be something to monitor, defensive back, and see what guys actually leave the program and see what depth needs to be filled.
Yeah, Big Dog wants to know, when all is said and done, in your opinion, will Raymond Cottrell and Deuce Robinson sign with this class? So if we're calling the shots today, I would say Raymond Cottrell. I mean, listen, all you can do is take the young man at his word. And he came out with Ryan Wright at Rivals and said, yes, I'm gonna sign with Georgia. Just gotta be patient. I think it's a numbers thing right now. They brought in the two portal guys, Trent. There's still that 85 that you got to navigate and in and out around. So I think that's kind of the deal there. Obviously there were some teams trying to get him on late, but I think it's more of a logistics type thing than it is a legitimate, maybe ended up elsewhere. That's my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think people got to understand that you can't just take unlimited early enrollees. You still, like you said, you still got to be at that 85. So whatever guys you feel like are leaving the program, that's how many early enrollees. You can only be at that 85. You can't be at 87 going in the spring and having 2 over. So really, I think it is a numbers thing. You can only take so many early enrollees, and he just happened to be the one that got asked to wait till February and wait till the summer to enroll. And I think all that's been worked out. And I expect him, as of today, to sign with Georgia in February and enroll in summer. And if you're asking me about Deuce, I would say as of the day, I think Georgia signs.
Yeah, I really think, as we sit here, December 26th, that Georgia has as much to sell and as much to show proof of development for Deuce Robinson as Texas or USC, even more so. Nobody has done, in my opinion, what Todd Hartley's done with that tight end group. And also, Jed, I mean, you cover all Georgia sports a little bit more than Trent and I do. We're kind of in football, but you're all the time having to help out with basketball, baseball, stuff like that. And I think that there's some traction maybe on the baseball side as well with Deuce Robinson and Scott Strickland and company over there. So,
yeah, I think all the programs. I mean, Texas for sure is one of, if not the premier baseball program in the country, and USC is a historically good baseball program as well. So that's something that Kirby Smart has been open to. Like Ryland Goody was kind of double dipping there for a while. honestly, I feel like those things usually turn out you're going to have to end up picking one or the other. Just because football, especially at a school like Georgia, is such a full-time year-round kind of deal. But yeah, I mean, it's certainly something that gets brought up in the recruiting process. Says, hey, if you want to try it, we will give you the opportunity to play both. So, that's something to watch as well with Deuce, a guy who, he I don't know a whole lot about baseball.
In terms of the
In
draft.
terms of the draft, yeah, like I don't know exactly what his draft prospects are and how he projects and all that kind of stuff. But he's certainly a guy who's got could have a future in that sport as well if he chose to go that route.
I do know right now, and the way the draft works is, with him not being listed, as in the top so and so, he's not on like the top 100 or whatever board right now. Some of that stuff gets offsetted by the NIL in college now. So what you could pull in at the draft, maybe in the later rounds, is not as it doesn't look as bright as it did back in the day because of the NIL and college kids being able to draw in that money.
Let's address this tight end group. Paul on YouTube wants to ask, what about Walker Lyons? Walker Lyons is going to be a guy, whether he ends up at Georgia or elsewhere. Did Walker Lyons? I don't think he signed anywhere, right? Because he did not sign anywhere. Whether he ends up at Georgia or elsewhere, he's really going to be either a 2024 or 2025 guy because he intends to go on a mission. He's a Mormon and he's got to go take care of that first. So there'll be a delay to the start of his college career. Robert Tony Wilson asks, do you see Kieris and Dom moving on? And then could Rosemy and Aaron Smith be potential portal entries? I don't like to speculate on guys being portal entries, but in terms of just moving on from the program, I mean, Kieris and Dom, been around a while. So what do you think, Trent, when it comes to Kieris and Dom? I mean, Kieris has got to move on, doesn't he? I don't even know if he's got any eligibility left.
Yeah, I would expect Kieris to move on. I mean, he almost moved on after last year. So, he came back, after the national championship, he made the announcement that he was coming back. But I would expect him to move on. As far as eligibility, I have no clue. Like we talked about earlier, I don't know who's what. I saw the one guy come back for a ninth year. So I don't know what's happening. But Dom walked on senior day. That was a little surprising to me, and it kind of tells me that he's really thinking hard about moving on. He's had a tough career with injuries, and I still fully don't think he's back up to what he was, and I'm not sure if he'll ever be back to what he was after the knee injuries. But I think as of today, I could see him moving on. And it's hard to speculate on Rosemy Jackson. He's received a lot of snaps this year. Filling in for A.D. Mitchell, playing a lot. I mean, he's played. Him and Ladd are the two receivers that have played the most snaps this year, and there's the receptions don't show for it, but he's been really good and from a blocking standpoint and everything. So hard to speculate on that one. And Arian Smith, you got to think about the track thing too. There's more to go. I mean, he's a guy that could just go straight track. I don't know what his situation is, and we'll see after the championship or after the playoffs run. But I think Arian is a guy that I'm not sure he moves on from Georgia exactly, but I don't know what his future plans are moving forward.
Now we have a question here about the 2024 O-line, and we're going to talk about 2024 after this question, but we'll just kind of segue into it from our guy, Andy Stowe. 2024 offensive line recruiting, how's it setting up? It's pretty open right now, Jed, but when you're talking about Daniel Calhoun, that's kind of where it's got to start for you. It's Centennial, like he's a big target there. Cam Pringle, a couple of those guys come to mind.
Yeah, I think from what we've been told, I think Georgia might see Daniel Calhoun ending up on the inside as a guy. So you look at him as an offensive guard and Cam Pringle as an offensive tackle. Those would certainly be that would be a pretty strong foundation to an offensive line class. I know Cam Pringle is, every time I've talked to him, he's gushed about he really loves Stacey Searles. He's building a relationship with Stacey Searles, his wife even. on his trips to campus, and we were talking earlier about the leaner, rangier guys that Georgia's brought in an offensive tackle. Cam Pringle is a behemoth. He's like a Clydesdale. Yeah. It's huge. So he's a little more in the mold of what you would necessarily think of a Georgia offensive tackle the past 5 or 6 years. But Georgia's one of the top contenders for both of those guys. I mean, they've been on campus a lot, made multiple visits, all that kind of stuff.
Fletcher Westfall's
another guy. Yeah. There's Jonathan Daniels, who camped at Georgia and got an offer. I've got a big board thing up right here. Walt Flynn is a guy who I think is very high on Georgia. He would pretty much have to be he would project as a center probably. I think Georgia might want to see him maybe grow and develop a little bit more before things really get super serious on that front. But yeah, the offensive line board is a little, you got those 2 big guys at the top and then guys like Daniels and Westfall and Walt Flynn below them. And then outside of that, there's still a little sorting out going on. So that's going to be one where it's going to be interesting to watch guys who show up on campus in the spring and summer and things really kind of develop from there.
Trent, when you talk about inside, there was a big visitor coming all the way out from Seattle with it's Izindre. I can't pronounce his name.
Oh, yeah.
Izindre Offa, one of those big Samoan dudes on the inside. And when you're able to get guys like that, he's listed at 6'5", 6'6", north of 330 pounds. And it's just something about, you see a lot of those guys end up at Utah. You see a lot of those guys end up at USC. If Georgia's able to bring one of those guys out past east of the Mississippi River over here and get him landed in Athens, that would be a huge pickup for Georgia.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that a lot of eyes will be on Stacey Searles' cycle. Bringing in those elite linemen this year that you're accustomed to with Georgia. And I think with him coming in, I guess late, it wasn't really late in the process, but later than what other staff members had. And I think he did a good job. I think he this past class, but I think Georgia will go out and have a focus on offensive line in this class. I think it's a big thing in this class. And I know quarterback is another position, but I think quarterback and offensive line are 2 places that you can't miss at in this class. And Georgia's already got a quarterback committed, but I think landing a couple of those elite guys that we talked about on the offensive line will go a long way to Georgia having one of the best classes they've had under Kirby Smart, because I think you're already seeing the skill guys. And Georgia's already got a several elite players committed in this class, and if you can add some elite linemen, and like I said, Georgia's in it for that Dylan Raiola and the number 1 player in the country. So looking at the class, it could very easily be one of the top classes that Kirby assigned. But I think offensive linemen will be the make or break deal here if you can land a couple of those elite guys.
Yeah, we're going to talk about some more 2024 targets here in just a second. I do have to answer PA Dog, and I'm not even going to put it on the screen because this is basically just for me. He wants to know who's the best hardcore wrestler of all time. It's got to be Mick Foley. Okay, if you're going with anybody but Mick Foley or Sabu, what are those 2? I'm not going to give it to you. All right, now back to the football here. When it comes to 2024, everybody knows that Georgia has some big-time commitments already. Nye Carr, Landon Thomas, Tavani Mizell, all of these guys, tremendous skill players on the offensive side of the ball. Ryan Puglisi, 4-star quarterback, of course, out of the New England area up there. And now all of the rumors, all of the speculation now that Dylan Raiola has entered back into the conversation because he's decommitted from Ohio State, and for good reason. People wanted to jump on and say, oh, well, people thought last week, well, by this time that Dylan Raiola would have already been committed to Nebraska, where his uncle is a coach and his dad is a legend that played there and things like that. I just came on the vault and told people that that's just not the case. That's not what we're hearing in terms of how this one is going to go down. It's going to be well thought through. It's going to be time is going to be taken to make this decision. Nebraska's involved. Southern Cal is involved, but nobody is more involved than Georgia. And I would venture to say that the conversations that have taken place between Dylan Raiola and the Georgia staff are plentiful, and maybe even more contact that he had with the entire Ohio State staff, even when he was committed there. So I'm just telling you, there's a lot going on, and Kirby's directly involved in this one. And Jed, we don't know what this would mean if, for Puglisi and all that kind of stuff. We're not even going to speculate on that. People want to ask about that because, listen, these are guys' decisions and what they have to make. But all we can tell you is that Georgia's definitely involved with Dylan Raiola, and they have a really good chance, in my opinion, to end up signing him in the class of 2024.
Well, and he was really close to committing. I forget when he committed, in the summer or whenever that was. I mean, Georgia was right there to begin with, and that was, of course, right in the middle of the Arch Manning sweepstakes, and that kind of took the headlines at the time. But as far as Puglisi, I don't think he's a guy who's the type to get in his feelings because Georgia's pursuing another guy. I think he wants to be a Bulldog. He's going to stay committed to Georgia. Now, if Raiola also commits to Georgia, then I think you could. I don't think it's a guarantee Puglisi would leave if Raiola committed to Georgia, but I don't think you'll see him decommit without Raiola committing, if that makes sense. Like, I don't think.
Yeah.
I think Georgia's going to get one of those two guys, whether it's Raiola, whether it's Puglisi. I think they end up with one of those two, and either one of those two. You were talking about earlier, Trent. You don't think Georgia can miss. I think both of those guys would be considered a hit because Raiola has obviously got all the talent in the world, and Puglisi is a guy that the Georgia staff has prioritized ever since they saw him work out in person. So the staff will be thrilled with either one of those guys, and I think ultimately they're going to land one of them.
Yep, I think those two of those they were top two at least of the top two of three guys on Georgia's board. I think Dylan Raiola was obvious the number one guy on a lot of people's board, but Puglisi was right behind Raiola when Raiola committed to Ohio State. Puglisi was kind of the next guy that Georgia spotlighted at the position, but definitely I don't think Georgia. This is a case where Georgia's going to go 0 for 2. They already have one committed, and I don't think you would see any movement with Puglisi. And I don't know if you would see it anyways. But until Raiola, if he did indeed commit to Georgia, then you might see some conversations or see him open it back up. But I think Georgia's not going to go 0 for 2 in this situation.
Yeah, I just man, people ask about one of the other. I don't think it's not our position to come out and say who we would take, one or the other. I'll just say this: Dylan Raiola, in my mind, is a guy that you have to take a shot on because he's that talented. And I'll just kind of leave it there. Not saying that I think Puglisi's extremely talented too, but I just think Dylan Raiola is.
It's kind of like Juju Lewis. Like,
yeah, I mean,
you have to go after him. It's kind of that thing.
Yeah, no, it's just one that it would be malpractice not to. So Ridu Fly, he kind of did some work for us here, and this would be a good way to kind of wrap it up. Mike Matthews, Sammy Brown, and KJ Bolden. Listen, those are the names right there, right? I mean, all in-state guys, all guys that Georgia has been, heavily recruiting for years now. Peyton Woodyard, listen, we've got future cast in for him, to Georgia. There's a lot of there's a lot of speculation that he could end up in the 2024 class sooner rather than later. Georgia. Will Muschamp, Fran Brown, Kirby Smart doing a lot of work out there. He's been to Georgia a lot. KJ Bolden, continue to hear that. I think he would end up being on the defense side of the ball. I know that there's been talk about him being a receiver, but man, I think he would end up being on the defense side of the ball. What's your opinion, Trent?
Yeah, I think KJ would be on the defense side of the ball. I like where Georgia sits for Peyton Woodyard and Sammy Brown. There's several schools involved, but Georgia's been there. Georgia's been in it since day one, and you got to like where Georgia stands and the way Schumann recruits that position. So yeah, I like where Georgia stands for all those guys right now. But again, this is 2024 guys talking about long ways to go. You can see Peyton Woodyard announced sooner rather than later, but I do like where Georgia stands for those guys.
Yeah, Woodyard's he's committing at the All-American Bowl. That's what, January?
January 6th or something.
Yeah, so it's coming up soon. And then of course when you talk about running back, Jarrett Gibson is a guy that you need to know for the 2024 class. Del McGee very heavily involved there already. Could pair him up with Tavani Mizell, and then Anthony Carey is another guy, Jed, that Georgia's been. Scooby. They've been recruiting him pretty hard for a while as well. I think depending on what you see happen at the quarterback position, depending on whatever happens with all this kind of stuff, Zion Reagans is a guy that you need to know in the receiving class. Of course, they already have Nye Carr on board, and Landon Thomas is a more of a receiving type tight end. So definitely some weapons that they're already adding in there. There's going to be names pop up as we're still, a little bit a ways away from all that. Of course, they have Sokovie White already a part of the class from Cass High School. They've really done work inside the state here. So just some names you need to know. We've touched the offensive line. Defensive line wise, Edric Houston and Dylan Stewart. Those are two names to commit to memory. Dylan Stewart's a guy that you need to know. Georgia very, very high on Dylan Stewart, and a guy that from that Mid-Atlantic area up there, Jed, that I believe Georgia has checked in on any time that they've had a chance to go and do so.
Yeah, and like you said, that board is also a little kind of like offensive line. It's still a little what's the word? Influx at the moment. Champ Thompson is another guy from Meadow Creek that's been in Athens a lot. Nasir Smith from Mater Dei. Heaven Brown Schuler is another guy who's in state. So yeah, and then some of these outside linebacker edge types. Booker Pickett, Elijah Rushing, Colin Simmons, who at one point was the number one player in that 24 class. Yeah, there's again, it's I like these 23 guys. There's the spring and the early part of the summer is so that's when these boards come into focus, because guys come and work out, or guys who have offers come and prove why they have offers. A new, if there's any staff turnover, then coaches bring in offer that, remember when Chidera Uzodoribe took that job and he starts throwing out offers left and right. A lot of this stuff kind of take shape in the spring. So it's going to be really interesting to see how these boards really begin to take shape over the next probably 2 or 3 months.
Absolutely. But you will find it all here on Rumors versus Facts, guys. We've went a little bit longer than usual. We appreciate guys jumping in here day after Christmas here. And I really enjoyed, I guess this is our last one of this calendar year probably. And then so next time we all have one, it'll be 2023. So appreciate all you guys that have tuned in this year. If you don't already, subscribe, turn on notifications, and we'll always be here covering UGA football recruiting for you, because it never stops. For my guys Trent Smallwood and Jed May, I am Blaine Gilmer, and we will catch all of you next Monday.